2023, what a year it has been, and it's been a busy year for news here in New England. We've covered everything from heartbreaking tragedies to fights over pizza. So here's a look at the top 10 stories on our websites from 2023.
Bowling leagues were just starting at the Spare Time Recreation Center in Lewiston Wednesday night when the first 911 call came in. At 6:56 p.m., a report of a man shooting inside the bowling alley on Mollison Street. Not even 15 minutes later, more 911 calls reporting an active shooter, but this time at the Schmenge's Bar and Grill on Lincoln Street, 4 miles away. Police swarmed both locations where we now know 18 people were killed. 7 at the bowling alley, 8 at the bar. 3 more died at the hospital, and more than a dozen others were hurt. Just after 8 p.m., police released the first photo of the suspected shooter, and an hour and a half later, he is identified as 40-year-old Robert Card of Bowdoin, Maine. A lot of people have said they can't imagine, and they're right.
It was at first hard to read. It was difficult.
My family was the best thing that ever happened to me.
You become awash in emotions.
Forgive Lindsay, as I have.
You begin to come to terms with his perspective.
It is the perspective of a Duxbury father, mourning the loss of his 3 children and asking the community to forgive his wife, who's accused of killing them. We talk one-on-one with the town manager in Duxbury about the powerful words from Patrick Clancy.
His comments have provided a tremendous amount of comfort to those who are wondering how to handle their emotions. He has provided a beacon of light.
That light leading to an outpouring of support for Lindsay Clancy, who sources tell us was living with postpartum depression. While she remains hospitalized, many are changing their profile pictures to this symbol for Lindsay's army of love.
Clearly, the culture is much more open about mental health than it was even 10 years ago.
Dr. Deborah Offner is a clinical psychologist and author based in Newton.
She wasn't herself when she did this, and I think if we can separate the person from the illness.
Lindsay Clancy is charged with murder and strangulation, but many hope what happened sparks an important conversation.
That people should reach out for help, because while this incident is incredibly rare, a lot of parents are suffering.
They were set to mark their 50th wedding anniversary, but when Bruno and Jill D'Amore didn't show up at this Newton church on Sunday, everyone knew something must be wrong.
The husband was just so proud and excited about putting this together, and wonderful family.
The D'Amores and Jill's mother, Lucia Arpino, found Sunday at their home in Newton. All 3 had been attacked. Investigators are looking into if this was random.
Wonderful, salt of the earth people. You know that book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People? This is it. Really, really good people. Salt of the earth.
In a letter written by the family and sent out by the church, Bruno being remembered for his big voice and exuberant personality, and as head chef at the parish picnic. Jill known for her work planting flowers, making the church grounds more beautiful. And Jill's mom never missed a 10 a.m. mass, attending for more than 60 years.
Open their door, hospitality, loving, so generous in taking care of the flowers at the parish. One of them, really dedicated, faith-filled, loving Italian-American Catholics.
The same love and loss felt in the neighborhood, still reeling from Sunday's crimes.
This shouldn't happen here.
James Bishop lives around the corner and spent Monday working to improve his home security after the events of Sunday.
It's just kind of just made you think a little bit, kind of re-examine, how do you protect yourselves in your house? And, But, it's the last thing you'd ever think here.
Drivers in Florida, listen up. There's a new immigration law that is cracking down on out-of-state licenses, and now certain ones from 5 different states are no longer valid in Florida. So what's changing under this new law? Well, anyone who does not have proof that they legally live or work in the U.S. can't get a Florida driver's license. This new measure also bans out-of-state driver's licenses issued exclusively to undocumented immigrants. Florida views them now as invalid. So what happens if you have an out-of-state driver's license? Well, if you get stopped stop for a traffic violation and give the police officer an out-of-state driver's license that's now considered invalid, you're going to get a ticket for driving without a valid license. Who's affected by this crackdown? Well, the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles listed the out-of-state license classes that are now invalid here in the Sunshine State. They include Connecticut licenses marked not for federal identification, Delaware licenses labeled driving privilege only or not valid for identification, Hawaii licenses that indicate limited purpose driver's license or limited purpose instruction permit or limited purpose provisional driver's license or not valid for use for official federal purposes. Rhode Island licenses marked not for federal identification or driver privilege card or driver privilege permit. And finally, Vermont licenses labeled not for real ID purposes driver's privilege card or not for real ID purposes junior driver's privilege card or not for real ID purposes learner's privilege card. And the change all comes as part of a larger crackdown by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is blaming the Biden administration for what he says is a crisis at the southern border. The governor said the license changes are meant to combat illegal immigration.
An unshaven Brian Walsh stares blankly as prosecutors detail disturbing Google searches they say he made on New Year's Day from his son's iPad. Prosecutors say Brian Walsh dismembered and discarded the body of his wife, Anna.
At 4:55 a.m. on January 1st, he searched how long before a body starts to smell. At 4:58 a.m., how to stop a body from decomposing.
That morning, she was supposed to be on a flight to Washington, D.C. It was days later when Anna was first reported missing. Prosecutors laid out a detailed timeline of the steps they say Brian took to buy new rugs and towels. It was January 2nd when he was spotted on surveillance cameras at a Home Depot buying cleaning supplies. Trash bags were discovered at several dumpsters, including in Swampscott outside his mother's apartment and a transfer station in Peabody.
Investigators recovered 10 trash bags. Inside the trash bags, many of these items contained stains consistent with blood.
Prosecutors say they found towels, a Tyvek suit, gloves, carpets, boots, a purse, and a COVID vaccine card with the name Anna Walsh on it. They also discovered a hacksaw, hatchet, and cutting shears.
The purse and boots were described as what Anna was last seen in. There was a portion of a necklace consistent with one that Anna had been seen wearing in photos.
The viral interaction between Barstool founder Dave Portnoy and the owner of a Somerville pizza shop. You've probably seen it all over social media, like everyone else here. Despite Portnoy calling it the worst pizza place in America, the restaurant's business, they say, has boomed. The shop sold out of pies twice over Labor Day weekend, but the owner also says there's been a lot of negative responses as well.
Okay, so Portnoy gave it, what, a 6.4. You've had it before. What would you give it?
It's not bad. It's not bad. Here's the thing. It's pizza. It's pizza when the sun is down. That's the good. Okay. That's the good stuff. It's better when the sun is down. Those of you who have had it know what I'm talking about. Kristen Bell and Shepard, I love them, right? Well, yes. Listen to this. They got kicked out of Logan after trying to spend the night there with their two kids Wednesday. Bell posted this on Instagram saying their flight was moved, so they planned to just crash at Logan. Their plan wasn't exactly happening as well as they thought because they got kicked out. They bought $600 worth of supplies. They were told to leave. There's a happy ending, though. The situation here, they say it was resolved. They found a place to stay with friends of friends at 1 in the morning.
Wow. Those are some generous folks.
I know, yeah.
Sure, we'll take you in at 1 a.m. and they had space for them, which is incredible.
Apparently, they went hiking with lots of dogs.
The next day,
yeah. And apparently, they said it was all worth it in the end, so.
An alarm went off. There's like this lady frantically saying that there's an active shooter.
Moments of terror at St. John's Prep in Danvers as the school went into lockdown Monday for an active shooter call.
We barricaded the door, and then a police officer, he kind of like broke the door in and told us just to run. So I made sure I was with my brother, and we just ran down a street into the woods.
We drove down immediately. We texted the kids.
But as parents rushed to reunite with their children and police swept the school buildings, determining this was just a hoax, one of the officers' guns went off in a middle school bathroom.
During the initial search, there was a discharge, accidental discharge. No one was injured. and that prompted the increased response from area departments.
That just added to the chaos and confusion as students were eventually brought to a tent that had just been used for commencement, so they were safely out of the buildings.
This is everybody's nightmare, and every parent, given the context of our culture today, is concerned that things like this can happen.
And I will kill every man on this plane.
Safety concerns once again hitting new heights. This intense cell phone video of a Leominster man lunging at a crew member with a broken metal spoon on a flight from LA to Boston taking off.
It was horrifying. It also made me incredibly angry.
Sarah Nelson is the president of the Association of Flight Attendants. She says staffing shortages have contributed to unsafe conditions on aircrafts and that violent individuals should be banned from flying.
Our union has been calling for a banned passenger list. If people are acting out violently on the plane, they should not be allowed to fly. And that may be for a period of time. We can determine what that is and have a due process if this is government run. But this bill is sitting in Congress right now.
It comes as a Senate hearing in D.C. is scheduled for Wednesday. Officials are set to look at aviation oversight and any FAA safety reform that may be necessary.
These workers are taking.
Massachusetts Congressman Stephen Lynch also calling for a review at Logan Airport after a number of close calls. On Monday, 2 aircraft touched on the tarmac. On Sunday, this man accused of trying to open a door and stabbing a crew member on the way to Boston. Last week, a JetBlue plane narrowly escaping a collision with a Learjet while preparing to land. Rep. Lynch saying in a statement, quote, "The FAA is responsible for flight operations, and I've already requested a briefing with their officials to get an update on their investigations into how these events occurred and propose solutions to ensure they do not continue."
You'd think the sound of construction activity at Mohammed Asif's Bedford home would be a positive sign of progress. But it's really a reminder that he already paid to have all this work completed.
It is my dream home, but what has happened is I've ended up paying all twice.
Twice because he wrote checks to the general contractor he hired to tear down and rebuild a new home. But last June, with the project months behind schedule, he says the business owner abandoned the job.
So I had to take over, work with all the subs, finish the project myself.
Mohammed was desperate to get a certificate of occupancy so his family could move in and stop paying rent at their temporary location.
You see all this water leaking?
But problems quickly surfaced with the work that had been done. And soon he was digging deep to repair the foundation.
You see these gaps?
Fix the chimney, and tear out and rebuild both bathrooms because water was leaking into the ceiling.
And you know, all this money which we are spending now, this is basically my kids' education money.
Taking on extra debt while trying to keep subcontractors from taking him to court.
The amount of stress I was in real panic situation. I had my job to take care of. I had my family and kids to take care of. I had all this home to be completed. And on top of that, I had all the subs or suppliers chasing me who were not paid and, you know, threatening me with a lien on the house.
I had to pay painter, I had to pay carpenter, I had to pay electrician.
It was more than just a threat for Rizwan Manzur. 7 subcontractors came knocking for money, and 2 put a lien on his property. The Bedford homeowner said he'd already paid the general contractor he hired 90% of the project cost, with plenty of items still left on the punch list.
I can't pay you more. This is the time to deliver a project rather than keep asking money. And that was the last conversation I had on the 19th of July. And then he simply disappeared. He's sitting here.
The construction equipment left behind, a bitter reminder of how much Rizwan says he lost to get his project across the finish line.
Most conservatively, I will say 150 to 160,000. I lost faith altogether, I have to be honest with you.
We're going to bump out everything here. The garage will end just about here.
Constantine and Zoya Durman never even broke ground on the home addition they plan to enjoy with their 2 kids.
I was really excited about this area.
The blueprint was ready to go, and after checking references and reviews, the Bedford couple felt confident in the contractor they hired.
The impression of him was he was very knowledgeable, very charming.
So they signed a contract last July and handed over a $35,000 deposit.
Our expectation was that there was going to be a permit in place and the foundation started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was your expectation?
Yeah.
What happened?
he disappeared.
A few weeks later, they were blindsided with the news the contractor was filing for bankruptcy.
So what happened to your money?
Well, he doesn't have it. He can't return it, and he doesn't know.
What's the emotion you're feeling?
The first emotion was certainly anger. Just felt very personal because it was just a big deal. And $35,000 is a big deal.